Welcome back to JW World News. My name is Vern, and today's date is June 9th, 2023. So time is approaching October 31st of this year. There is a protest at the White House. It's under Be Free 2023. We have a description or a link to it in our description of this video. And so there's a lot happening this year. This is a marked year for ex Jehovah's Witnesses and for Jehovah's Witnesses. So now, as an ex Jehovah's Witness, I was in it for 30 years, and perhaps you were in it for a lot of years also. And when we were in it, we thought that it was the truth, or we wouldn't have been in it. But we now realize we were lied to and we were deceived, and it was all part of a conspiracy to control us to support the Watchtower and its printing efforts and to support the men that run the organization, the Supreme Council that they call the governing body. Now, for a lot of us that get outside of the Jehovah's Witness, and I know for me, inside my mind, I have many times imagined going to court and standing up to the governing body and defending the truth. And I would sue them for lying, for lying about the truth, and take them to Supreme Court and get them to get up in front and defend what they call the truth. And if they can't defend it, then they get shut down in Supreme Court, in World Council. And that's kind of always my reoccurring dream. I don't know about yours, but I know that'll never happen in my lifetime. Or do I want to be really involved in a lot of legal stuff either? So be careful with legal things. Legal lawsuits can suck the life out of you financially, mentally, and emotionally. So those are some warnings. Is it worth it? These are some of the decisions you have to make. But today we're going to be discussing, can I sue Jehovah's Witnesses for trespassing, for harassment, or for abuse? And the short answer is yes. Now, we went to Find Law, and these guys actually put an article out. They used Jehovah's Witnesses in their article. So all of the lawyers all over the world, I think, realize that there's going to be a lot of lawsuits against Jehovah's Witnesses. And we're going to cover some of them here. So all over the world, lawyers are putting out ads, and they're advertising for Jehovah's. They're using the name Jehovah's Witnesses because Jehovah's Witnesses are all over the news right now when it comes to lawsuits and CSA lawsuits. Now, we're going to look at this. This is by Robert Raffi and legally reviewed by Stephen J. Ellison. And this was last reviewed April 10th, 2023. So this is really current stuff. This article has been written and reviewed for legal accuracy, for clarity, style by FinLaw's team of legal writers and attorneys, and in accordance with our editorial standards. So I found it easy to read, and that's why I'm presenting it to you guys today. It's fact-checked. The last update date refers to the last time this article was reviewed by Finland or one of its contributing authors. And we make every effort to keep our articles updated for information regarding specific legal issues affecting you. And please contact an attorney in your area. And they have a quick link here so you can find an attorney. Now, the article goes on to say, whether it's a Jehovah's Witness, a member of another religious organization, or someone else loitering at your doorstep, there are some situations where you can sue to keep them away. Now, keep in mind that your lawsuit won't get anywhere if you're just suing for something petty. Someone knocking door to door isn't necessarily trespassing. Now, if a person is just trying to talk to you, and even if they call you names, that's not automatically harassment. On the other hand, if someone won't leave you alone or comes onto your property or person without your consent, they might be violating your legal rights. And this is especially true if you ask them to stop or leave, but they continue to repeat the bad behavior. Now, I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness. And when I was out in the ministry, and I pioneered for a number of years, and I would go back, and sometimes we wouldn't take no for an answer. And they'd take the magazines, and then we'd say, well, maybe they had a bad day, and then we'd wait a few weeks, and we'd call back on them, and hey Harry, how you doing? I just thought I was in the area, so I thought I'd stop in and say hi. And Harry says, I told you not to ever come back here. And sometimes Jehovah's Witnesses just don't take no, and I'm guilty of that. Now, on the other side of the fence, isn't it interesting that you can get sued for this if you don't listen? Now, we're going to get into this a little bit further here. If you consider suing for trespassing, you may want to speak to a personal injury lawyer. And if the harassment or abuse includes sexual assault or physical violence, you should continue speaking with sexual harassment attorney. And they will have experience dealing with people who won't stop bothering you. Now, suing a religious organization. If the person bothering you is a member of a religious organization, you may be able to sue both that person individually as well as the organization that they represent or belong to. For example, the legal entity that Jehovah's Witnesses are associated with is the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, which is a non-for-profit corporation with church elders, officers, all over the country, including in big states like California and New York. When an alleged abuser is a member of the Jehovah's Witness Church or is otherwise associated with Jehovah's Witness congregation, then you may be able to make a legal argument that when they do something bad, they are acting on behalf of their religious group. So this is very important. So, under the law of agency, someone who acts as an agent of an organization can create legal responsibility or liability for that entity. And when the organization sends that agency on a mission, example, going door to door, going out in the ministry or missionary, to do something as knocking on people's doors and saying, we have the truth, then that person's actions can affect both the person individually as well as the entire organization behind that person. So, in other words, if you reasonably believe that someone who trespasses on your property or who harasses and abuses you is acting under the instruction, control, or authority of the Jehovah's Witness group institutions, you can sue them individually and join the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society as a co-defendant in your lawsuit. So, if someone came to your door and they harassed you and they wouldn't leave you alone, and you repeatedly said, no more, no more, maybe even put a sticker up, no more, I don't know. But you can now sue them, the person, and the Watchtower for harassment. I'm just going to wet my tongue here. Today, what we have in this bottle is good old-fashioned farm well water. And did you know that your dogs, if you take well water out of the well, pour it into a dish, your dogs 100% of the time will choose well water over city water? It's just a known fact. Trust your animals. Back to the article. Okay. Now, in the article, we're gonna talk about this suing and what's going on. So, in other words, if you reasonably believe that someone who trespasses on your property or harasses and abuses you is acting under instruction, control, or authority of Jehovah's Witness group and of institutions, you can sue them and the Watchtower. So, when someone's coming to your door with the good news of the kingdom and the Watchtower in hand, you know that these people are coming under the authority of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. So the Watchtower assumes responsibility when they send their people door to door. So they're always attached to your lawsuit. Okay, now we're going to talk about trespass claims. When someone is knocking on your door to sell you something or tell you about the good news of the Lord's love, they may already be on your property. But does this mean they're trespassing? Good question. To trespass simply means to be on someone's land or property without their permission. While the law between states can be different, the elements of trespass typically involve number one, land or property that you own; number two, which is intentionally or carelessly violated or entered by someone; and number three, who doesn't have permission to be there; and number four, resulting in harm to you. So that's important. What kind of harm did they bring to you from their trespassing? Now, if a Jehovah's Witness walks up to your door, they aren't necessarily trespassing yet. And this can change if they've already walked past your fence or they're standing on your porch. And here's the key: and you've asked them to leave. That's the key. If they refuse, you may be able to sue for trespass and other claims discussed further in this article. So oftentimes, and I know from experience as a Jehovah's Witness, you get into the door and it's hard to get rid of a Jehovah's Witness once they're in your door. I've been with some elders that just wouldn't take no for an answer. And they would just stand there and the person would say, well, I'm not interested. And then they go to another scripture. And then the person would say, well, look, I'm really not interested. And then they go to another scripture. And, that person, I felt uncomfortable working with that elder. When someone says I'm not interested, it's time to leave. Like you'd think, right? But not all Jehovah's Witnesses. Some of these elders and some of these elder pioneers, they think that they are in God's right hand, the 7 stars. And that's what the Jehovah's Witness religion teaches. They teach that the elders are higher up than everyone else. So that's why we have such a high level of narcissism built within the elder bodies of Jehovah's Witnesses. So now, the above discussed trespass in the civil private lawsuit context. If you report trespass to the police, law enforcement officials can also bring criminal charges against a trespasser. And I'll tell you right now, if you start phoning the police up and say, I have Jehovah's Witnesses trespassing, they're going to send over the squad cars, because Jehovah's Witnesses are all over the news for CSA and abuse and hiding it. And this has now become an awareness to the whole world, to a law enforcement, and especially what's happening with all the shootings amongst the kingdom halls all over the U.S., all over the world for that matter. So Jehovah's Witnesses, the word Jehovah's Witness is not a good word on the internet when you do the research. So it's all dealing with legal lawsuits all over. So yes, if you phone the police and you have problems with Jehovah's Witness on your doorstep, you go into the kitchen, you have like that elder that won't leave, you say, excuse me for a moment. You walk into the kitchen and phone 911 and say, I have a Jehovah's Witness here that won't leave. And when the police get there, they'll charge him. They'll criminally charge him, and you'll tell the story. And you might, I always thought if I had one of those baby cameras or something up, I'd tape the whole thing. But anyways, you got to be careful because you can't set it up. If you're caught staging this all, then you're in worse shape. It's not about staging it, and it's not about setting it up, but it's about realism. It's about what happens within the Jehovah's Witness religion when they get in your door. They don't want to leave. A lot of them don't want to leave, and you have a right to charge them for trespassing. All you got to do is say, I'm done. I want you to leave. And they won't leave, and they keep talking. And sometimes, let's say you're the woman of the house and the guy's over there. And let's say you're the woman of the house. You know how women of the house are a lot of times, they run the house. That's their house. This is their house. Take your shoes off. This is my house. So the woman of the house, right, in a lot of cultures, and the guy's there, and the Jehovah's Witnesses come in, and maybe it's the guy's the softer one. He let the Jehovah's Witness in the door, and the mom comes in and says, I want you guys to leave. And they don't leave, and they keep looking at the dad. You see, in Jehovah's Witnesses disregard what the woman says because they figure that the man has authority over the woman. But that's not the way it is in real life. When that's that woman's house, at least it's 50% of her house. And when she says, I want you to leave, you better damn well leave, because I wouldn't mess with the woman at the house. But anyways, the above discusses trespassing in civil and private lawsuits, and you can drag you're going to drag the co-defendant is going to be the Watchtower, Bible and Tract Society. They sent that person to your door, and they're responsible. Now, fine law has general resources on trespass laws, including trespass basics, that are highly recommended for further understanding of the legal concepts discussed here. So, of course, I'm not a lawyer, nor do I have any expertise in school to understand legalities such as this. But I have a lot of experience in life, and I've hired a lot of lawyers in life, and I've had to do a lot of things with lawyers, so in various levels. So, anyways, as we move through our life, hopefully we never have to use a lawyer. But if you're selling property, or you're going through a divorce, you have to use a lawyer. At least here in Canada, you have to use a lawyer. Now, let's get on to intentional infliction of emotional distress. That's a big word. Can Jehovah's Witnesses cause intentional infliction of emotional distress? Let's see what it says here. As the law continues to evolve, states are recognizing claims that involve more than just physical harm. When someone causes mental and emotional damage to you through their abusive actions, you may be able to pursue them for negligent, and it's called NIED, they abbreviate this, or intentional infliction of emotional distress, and they call this IIED, depending on the rules in your state. So every state's a little bit different, but here's three of the basic things that are involved here with this emotional infliction of emotional distress. It claims generally involves the following elements. Number one, outrageous or extreme behavior by someone. So outrageous or extreme behavior by someone. So look for those things. If a Jehovah's Witness comes to your door and they're outrageous and extreme behavior, and they're talking about everyone getting roasted at Armageddon, that's extreme. To me. And if my kids were there listening to this nonsense at the door and thinking these are Bible people, kids have a hard time figuring this stuff out. So yeah, outrageous or extreme behavior, by someone. So even for them to visualize and show the pictures from the Watchtower magazines, and we could go online and in fact, let's do that. Let's just we're gonna put this on pause and let's just do that. We're going to plug in images. Jehovah's JW Armageddon images. JW Armageddon images. And they use these images to sell their religion. So now one of the ones I refer to a lot, and there's a lot of them. If you're looking, I'm not even opening one of them up. We can open them up here. Okay, here they are. See all the images? It's just a big war, and all the songs are marching songs and war songs. Forward, you ministers, blah 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 blah, or the victory song. Firm and determined till this time of the end. This is what this religion is about. It programs the people. You see, all these people are smiling, but yet back there, all the world is dying. And here's one that I use, this one here. This one's a depiction of, you see the little kids here, they're all happy. And they show this. Jehovah's Witnesses use these pictures at the door. And it's mostly photography. And now they're getting into their iPads and they're getting videos and they're making this stuff real. And they're building a studio so they can make this stuff look so real that it grips you from the bottom of your soul. And it haunts you. And this is what's going on within this religion. And they're using this to scare people to join their religion and give them money and sign their estates over. So this is what's happening within the Jehovah's Witness religion. I know this. I was in it for 30 years. So now, number 2, it says, who is being either purposefully or carelessly abusive to you? So now we're getting into where they're using abuse, perhaps CSA. And number 3 is their actions cause severe emotional distress to you, including the possibility of physical harm. But this could be anything. So you have to read between the lines. Now, for example, it gives, if a Jehovah's Witness elder keeps putting you down and calling you a liar for reporting a rape, they could be liable to you for NIED or IIED, depending on how carelessly or purposefully they acted or failed to act. So if they failed to not protect you, you see, these elders are officers. They're considered officers of the religion. And if they fail to protect you, then they become liable. Now, and for more general overview of harassment laws like IIED, check out our article on suing for harassment. There's a link here. Now, I'm going to put a link to this article, of course, in the video, like I do in all the videos. Now, restraining orders. A restraining order or an order for protection is a court order requiring that a person stay away from a victim. And when you sue someone to get a restraining order, you're asking the court to force that person to maintain a safe distance from you at all times. A violation of the order can mean that the person can be arrested, fined, and or imprisoned. Now, if someone is trespassing or harassing or abusing you, document their behavior as best you can. So this is important. Document their behavior. Start a journal. Put the dates, the times. Journals are excellent. They're used in court and they're trusted. And that's your journal, and as long as it's consistent. And dates and times are so important. So this means keeping text messages too. So a lot of stuff is happening on text messages. So there is a way of keeping those text messages and not deleting them. And records of annoying phone calls or emails, or documenting instances of stalking and persistent pestering. When they come door to door on a return visit, that's stalking. Jehovah's Witnesses sometimes drive by. We used to drive by in the rural areas and check out and get to know which vehicles they have and get to know if they're home. We would be, in essence, stalking our return visits. Seriously. I was guilty of this. And I agree, it should not be allowed. It should not be allowed. I was under a false pretense when I was coming to people's doors. I didn't have a clear mind. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was trusting the Watchtower. I was trusting these men in New York that claim to be God's servants, but they're really just people. They make mistakes. They have to delete people within God's servants. Like, how could God's servants that make all these rules, all of a sudden one day they're bad and the group kicks them out? Toni Morris, it happened. So we get to realize that this is not God's organization. This is really just an organization of printing Watchtower magazines and trying to control people and get their money. So it's really not a good organization. And they hide all the sexual abuse within this organization. In fact, going to the point of destroying records. So we're going to get back to the article. If someone is trespassing, harassing, or abusing you, document their behavior as best you can. And this means keeping these text messages and all these emails. And you can show that the perpetrator has a pattern of engaging in behavior that threatens your safety. And a court will be more likely to grant a restraining order. So while the requirements and consequences of a restraining order can vary from state to state, they'll generally involve the court's order that someone must stay away up to a certain distance from your home or other permanent or temporary areas of residence, to stay away from your car or your property, and to stay away from your places of employment. And the court might also order the perpetrator to refrain from contacting you in person or otherwise via your email, social media, phone numbers, etc. And that's what happens. Jehovah's Witnesses build a database on all of their return visits. And then they keep pestering them by email because they get to mark a return visit. every time they pester you. And you see, to them, it's not pestering. To them, it's brownie points. To them, they have good points. At the end of the month, they mark in their slip. I pestered you 47 times. That's good. 47 return visits, pestering you in a month, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. You see, now we build up this library. We're the victims. We're at the door. We're getting pestered. We didn't ask for this. We came and we just took the magazine once. We just took that damn magazine once, and they won't leave me alone. You see, you can you can charge them, and you can get restraining orders. Yeah, and I think you start calling the police and get the police involved and let them do the work. So the nice thing with the police is they take it under their authority, and then you kind of stand back and you let them do it. And if they're breaking criminal laws like trespassing, and now with Jehovah's Witnesses this much on the red alert in the news, they're red flagged, and the police are going to come in and help you. I believe that. So, of course, lawyers like, be careful. Lawyers like to make money off us. So lawyers want us to do what they call civil lawsuits. So we phone the lawyer up, and every time you call the lawyer, oh, I'll give you your first hour for free. But then you go back and, I don't think there's a lot of lawyers that'll take the case on straight commission. They always want to, the lawyers, they get their hooks into you too. They're businesses. But unfortunately, you do need lawyers to take this stuff up to higher courts if it's serious, if it's sexual abuse and stuff like that. And now I'm going to cover my next article. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, because the next article I'm going to be covering sexual abuse here in Canada and what's going on. You don't even need a lawyer for a class action. It's quite cool. And in fact, if you don't even file in Canada here, you're still covered. They're still going to give you $100,000 if you've been abused with this class action. I'm covering that on my next video. But anyways, let's get back to this. So you don't want Jehovah's Witnesses at your door. There is a lot you can do. And I think we should just start calling them on trespassing. If they're not listening to our no, then we have a legal case. So it says, while getting a restraining order might be a good start as far as keeping yourself safe, you may need to sue for additional claims to recover damages that you may have suffered from the abuse and harassment. So this is important, and this is why you need a civil lawyer to do the sue. You see, the Crown prosecutor will get them off your back, and they will put a restraining order out and serve it. And then that person, if they break the restraining order, now it's a judge's order. Now they can go to jail, directly to jail, without passing go, because there's a restraining order and they broke it. So restraining orders are powerful because it involves a judge, and that's powerful. Now, if there's damages and you lost work and you lost clients and you lost this and you lost that, and there's damages, then you need a civil lawyer to sue for damages. So that's kind of how that works. Okay, we're going to go on sexual abuse lawsuits. If you're holding back because of the two-witness rule, please don't. Jehovah's Witnesses have an internal policy that requires 2 witnesses to prove that someone is guilty of sexual assault. The law, on the other hand, doesn't work that way. Even if you have just 1 witness or no witnesses at all, the courts have an interest in hearing your sexual abuse allegations. Whether you were a Jehovah's Witness child when the crime occurred, or whether you've been a subject to sexual abuse under the hands of any other religious organization later in your life, you should strongly consider bringing a civil claim against the person and the institution, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, responsible for what happened to you. And that's it. We can't help anybody if we don't raise our voice. So it's up to us. Now, FindLaw's sexual assault resources are a great starting point for understanding your rights, and there's lots of links here. And while sex abuse claims vary from state to state, any inappropriate sexual contact, even if it doesn't amount to rape, can be actionable in court. And some examples from our sexual assault overview page include fondling, kissing, or making unwanted bodily contact. unwanted bodily contact. Elders, I know of elders that would put little girls on their laps. And fondling, kissing, or making unwanted bodily contact. Forcing another person to perform or receive oral sex. Forcing a tongue, mouth, finger, penis, or an object into another person's anus or genitals. And forced masturbation. Now, just so you know, folks, when we talk about these things, and we don't like to talk about them, but YouTube does monitor all of our videos, and they do flag these as CSA. And when we talk about them, we're not able to monetize on any of these videos for any of our work, and it's because advertisers really don't want to be advertising, or there's only certain advertisers on those types of videos, and we respect that. But so now what we do with these videos, it's more of a public service to you guys. So we do appreciate any donations, any help you can give us to help us along the way. We are saving up to get new lights, and that is coming. So thanks to all of your support so far. We're about halfway there. And then we can improve upon our green screen and some of our lighting in our studio. So all of this is made possible due to my good wife. She's at the other end, and that's why we call it Shaw Vern Productions. We work together as one unit. And we throw lives on every Tuesday night at 5 o'clock, every Saturday at 2:30 and Mountain Standard Time. So we invite you all to join our lives, and we cover a number of subjects, especially if you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, you're coming out of the Jehovah's Witness religion, and you have a lot of questions. So on these lives, we try to cover some of these questions that you might have. So now getting back to the article here, regarding all of the situations that can happen when it comes to lawsuits regarding the Kingdom Hall, any of this stuff happening, fondling, kissing, or making unwanted bodily contact. If this is happening at the Kingdom Hall, book studies, they used to have book studies in homes. I don't see any timelines on this, but as soon as you can get it brought to the forth, the better. But a lot of this has been hidden, and people have got, we're now older, and we go back in our memory, we think of these things. Well, we can certainly find, and usually it doesn't cost, or it shouldn't cost anything to phone and report this. Most lawyers now will take this on. It's actionable, and they get enough of it. It's like class action almost. And we're going to get into the class action, what's happening here in Canada regarding the sex abuse. So it goes on to say this is not an exhaustive list, and the victim's experiences can largely vary depending on many different subjective and objective factors. While this is a difficult topic for most victims, there's good feelings about knowing that you're making your voice heard so that the future generations won't have to be victimized by these abusers any longer. And I think that's a big thing, is we're doing it for our children and for the next generation. The time to bring a sexual abuse lawsuit is limited by state law. So there you go. So it is limited. Some states have extended or eliminated the statute of limitation for plaintiffs to file sexual assault lawsuits. And I think in Canada, there's no limitation. This is especially helpful to adults who were victims of child molestation in prior years, but lacked the independence or weren't old enough to know what they could assert their legal rights against the criminal pedophiles. The above discusses Jehovah's Witnesses' sexual abuse claims in the civil and the private lawsuit context. If you report sex offenders to the police, law enforcement officials can also pursue the criminal charges. If you are a victim of sexual abuse, you may have say in pressing charges and serving as a witness for the prosecution. However, it's ultimately up to your local prosecutor to decide on whether or not to file a criminal complaint against the perpetrator. So it's up to the police and the Crown. So class action lawsuits against religious institutions. This is the next one. In recent years, religious groups have been criticized for allegations of child sex abuse. It has become commonplace to hear about child sex abuse cover ups, whether by Catholic Church or by Jehovah's Witness elders. I just think it's bizarre to read stuff like this now. We used to read it was only the Catholic Church, but now it's saying whether by Catholic Church or by Jehovah's Witness elders. It's bizarre. We can certainly see that this whole religion is no different than any other religion out there. They are not God's chosen organization. No. And for this reason, Jehovah's Witness lawsuits can take the shape of class actions. This means that the victims of sexual abuse or other kinds of harassment can come together in a group to combine their claims against the same defendant, the religious institution that may be responsible for the abuse that they have faced. Depending on whether a class action lawsuit is being filed in state court or federal court, there are different requirements before it can be certified by the judge. A leader or class representative, typically someone who has suffered at the hands of a defendant and is intending to sue personally anyway, decides to sue the defendant on behalf of all other injured parties. Unless you're in federal court, local laws can vary, but in general, the leader of the class action has to show, number one, that there are numerous plaintiffs who can be identified, and allowing them to join a single action, class action, is a more efficient way of doing litigation because it spreads out the costs. The plaintiff's claim involve common factual or legal issues. And number three, the leader of the class has claims that are similar to or the same as those common legal issues and will be an appropriate representative of all the potential plaintiffs. For example, if you grew up as a Jehovah's Witness in a community of children who were all abused by the same authority figures, you could be a class representative in a class action for all the kids who suffered from the same kind of abuse that you had to endure. Those other children can then join the class action lawsuit or pursue their individual claims separately if they wish. So I thought that was a really good explanation of class action. Remedies. If you win a lawsuit for trespass, harassment, or abuse, the court may award you a number of different remedies to try and make you whole for the damages that you suffered. Examples of relief include restraining orders. As already discussed above, keep in mind there doesn't actually have to be physical violence committed against you for a court to grant you a restraining order. Harassment and abuse can take shape in different forms, and the facts of each case can be persuasive in their own unique ways. Now, injunctive relief. This is an order from the court forcing someone to stop doing something. It can be an order for an abuser to cease their harassment, or it can be a more general order against the entire religious organization that it must stop allowing abusive behavior to take place, such as by turning a blind eye to crimes like sexual assault. Compensatory damages include money for pain and suffering, personal injuries, medical expenses, loss of income, and other harms. Punitive damages to punish a defendant that acted with egregious disregard for your well-being. I don't know if I said that right. So outstandingly bad and shocking. Outstandingly bad and shocking.
Egregious.
Egregious. You got that?
Egregious.
You got that? Got it. Come on.
Egregious.
Egregious. Egregious. It's like shocking. Egregious. Okay. Punitive damages to punish a defendant that acted with egregious disregard for your well-being, like egregious, like outrageous. Speak with a harassment lawyer. If you are being bothered by someone who is trespassing on your property, continue speaking with a personal injury lawyer. If you or your family member have been a victim of sexual abuse or someone has trespassed onto your property and won't stop harassing you, contact a sexual harassment attorney who can help you take legal action against the perpetrator. And you should obtain legal advice even if you don't believe your situation amounts to a sexual abuse case. More often than not, a sexual harassment attorney will have experience dealing with people who won't stop bothering you, even if there is no violence or sexual element to their annoying behavior. From a legal standpoint, it might be enough that only trespass and nonviolent harassment occurred before you can bring a lawsuit. So you can imagine Jehovah's Witnesses going door to door, and they're very nosy. And so legally, they come up to the sidewalk and they knock at the front door. Now, typically, they're not supposed to go around to the back door and check, especially if there's a fence or something like that. But what if there's not a fence? What if there's just a sidewalk going around to the back, and then you go back and on the deck, there you go. You have the woman of the house sunbathing without clothes on. And there the Jehovah's Witnesses is looking with the briefcases, two of them, because they always go in two, right? And they go around to the back and they're sitting there with their briefcases looking at the woman sunbathing nude. Do you think she has a case? I would say so. So now there's lots to this. So you guys, you have to be the judge. And this just gives you a little bit of an introduction. I know this video was a little longer than I wanted, but I think it's pertinent information. And if you're in a situation where you can sue Jehovah's Witnesses, this is vital information. So until next time, folks, let's just keep living our life with love, and we'll find that we won't get ourselves into these situations. We won't be going door to door, and we won't be snoopy, and we won't be wondering what are people doing and why can't I get them at home, and it's their life, and they're going to die in Armageddon if I don't contact them. You see, living our life with love means that we trust God. God's going to move all people in the right way, and people have to move. If they want church or they want religion, they're going to do that when they want. They're going to do it on Sunday. Maybe they're a couch Christian. They're not going to do it in the middle of the day when they're sun tanning nude in the privacy of their backyard, where they should be allowed to do things like that. But with Jehovah's Witnesses around, your privacy is never, never guaranteed. So as soon as you take that watchtower at the door, you're hooped. If you're at the other end, so that's the first cue. So, anyways, folks, keep living your life with love, and we don't have these issues. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.